Welcome to A Place for Film, the IU Cinema podcast. On this week's episode, it's fall 2013 cinema schedule time. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Andy Hunsucker.
And I'm Jason Thompson.
And on this week's episode, we're talking about the fall 2013 cinema schedule, Jason,
Yes.
with director of the IU Cinema, John Vickers. Hello, John.
Hi, guys. Good to be back.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. And we'll talk about the schedule here a little bit. You've been teasing some things on the Facebook page, but we got the whole thing right here in front of us. So we will be talking all about that. There's some big names coming.
Mm-hmm.
One in particular, it's a very large name coming. So we're excited about that. Okay, so let's talk about the cinema schedule. Fall 2013, I am looking at the book right now. You can take a look at the book as well while you're watching. John just posted a link to it on the Facebook page, so you can check that out and read along as we go. So it's always tough to figure out where to start with this, but I think let's just start with our strength, John. There's a couple of really big names coming. One of them, I think, is a lesser-known big name. People have seen his work, maybe don't connect it with him. Another one is unmistakable. Everyone knows who this person is.
Yes.
So let's start with the director.
Okay.
Nicholas Winding Refn.
Yeah, so Nicholas Winding Refn. He is a bit of, and I would say maybe even more than a bit of a provocateur. He and Lars von Trier from his home country of Denmark, as well as Nicholas, kind of clash at times because they're both provocateurs.
Yeah.
But he's made a number of films, and most of them, they're action films in a way, but they also are very violent typically. And so we're showing a series titled Art as an Act of Violence, and that's actually a quote from Refn himself. And he has even claimed himself to be a pornographer of violence. But we're showing two films that influenced, or actually maybe three films that have influenced his newest film. So his newest film is Only God Forgives. It was booed at Cannes by some, but it was also praised by some at Cannes.
Yeah.
So there have been some great films over the years booed at Cannes.
Yes.
But it is a meditation on violence. He said he made the film or wrote the film when he wanted to fight God himself because he was going through some personal issues with his family. And so it's a story of a young man played by Ryan Gosling who has to satisfy his mother who wants him to take revenge I'll say take revenge after something happens to his brother. And I don't want to give away any plot points, but it is ultra-violent. It's beautifully stylistic, and when I say it's meditative, it's pretty slowly paced at times. And in fact, critics have criticized Ryan Gosling's role of being zombie-like, or I'll say zombie-like. But I think it's absolutely perfectly in tune with what Refn had in mind, and so. If you're a fan of his work, after we talk about his other work, I think you'll really enjoy this film.
Yeah.
The film before that was Drive with Ryan Gosling as well.
And I would say that Ryan Gosling plays a very reserved character in that as well.
He does.
I mean, I read articles where he talked about how he would look at scenes and talk to Nicholas and say, how can I say less in this scene? Like, what can I do without talking?
Yeah.
So it seems like that's where they're heading. With that film. I
think so. And actually then the film before that also has a very meditative hero or anti-hero, and that film was Valhalla Rising, which we're also playing.
Oh, yeah.
So three of the four films have these stoic, I don't know if stoic's the right word, but these lead characters that are pretty quiet and say almost nothing. So, the third film we're playing is Valhalla Rising, which is about a character named One Eye, which is basically a hired fighter, but he's not hired because he's a captive fighter for this Nordic tribe. And finally, he finds a way to break free and do what he thinks is maybe good in this world, but in a very violent way. And then the film before that is Bronson with Tom Hardy. And it's a bizarre film, but
it is bonkers. Yeah. That is the only way I can describe it.
Word
I watched this movie and I was like, First of all, how did I not? I know you talked about it
Yeah.
earlier, Jason, and I was like, how did I not listen to Jason on this one?
Right.
Because it reminds me a lot of Kubrick. It feels
Yeah.
very much like and the Malcolm McDowell film. Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange, yeah.
Sure.
It feels a lot like Clockwork Orange, but it just the character is so different from that, and his results are so different.
Yeah.
Right.
And he just revels
Well, he
in
just-
everything.
He just plays about 3 or 4 different characters too. You
Yeah.
know, just kind of the same person, but a different type of that person, which is amazing. I find it, and I said this before, it's very sort of stagey.
It is.
Like theatrical.
Absolutely.
And there are times where it is literally, you know,
Yes.
stagey at times. But yeah, if you were not impressed by Tom Hardy as Bane,
Yeah.
go watch this movie because
Right.
that's almost who Bane should have been, I
Yeah.
think. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that one. That one sat in my Netflix queue forever before I watched it. And I was like, why did I not see this? I must say, though, Drive still remains the best movie I've seen at the cinema in terms
kidding.
of the way it looked, the way it sounded, and just the overall feeling that you got while watching the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I
that was
agree.
just such a special treat.
I think you'll like this new one too. The sound design in the new one's wonderful. The visuals are great. I mean, I think you'll like this experience as well. I didn't see it in the cinema. I saw it on a laptop. So, but I can just I'm dying to see it
Yeah.
in the cinema. Refn has said that he's had the good fortune of working with 3 of the best leading men, and I think he has. So Tom Hardy, Gosling, and then Mads Mikkelsen,
yeah.
who's blowing up in
Yeah.
America
He is.
now.
Right.
He is.
Well deserved.
no question. So I'm glad that but he's been making movies for a long
Oh,
time.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that he is being recognized in America.
Yeah.
So that should be an interesting visit, no question. And in conversations with him on the telephone, he seems like he's going to be a fun guest, and
Good.
so he'll talk about anything. He is giving a Jorgensen lecture as well, and the lecture is going to be focused on a filmmaker that he's trying to save named Andy Milligan. So there's a filmmaker from the 70s that he's trying to save not only the legacy of this filmmaker, but also the film prints. And so he's restored 2 of the film prints. He's restoring more, and he's going to talk about that. And we're bringing in, per his request, Andy Milligan's biographer. So it'll be a great conversation on
Excellent.
stage, who happens to be writing a biography on Neil Young right now. So,
cool.
so I think he'll be an interesting guest as well.
Yeah.
And we've played a Milligan film at the cinema last semester, right? Or the semester before?
We did. We played Flesh Pot on 42nd
yeah.
Street.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yes, Nicholas may talk about that as well.
Yeah. So you said that you're also playing some films that were influential.
Well, we're playing 2 films that he feels are most inspired. Only God Forgives, and that's Valhalla and Bronson.
So his own films inspired him.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Well, I shouldn't have. Maybe I referenced that wrong.
No, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine.
And just FYI, I mean, he's continuing to work on and get offered some pretty interesting things.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I don't know if you know, but he's remaking Barbarella for TV.
That makes perfect sense,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. it is.
That makes perfect sense.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it
I
will
love
be
that
ultra
idea.
stylized, I'm sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other big name.
Sure.
Glenn Close is coming to the cinema.
Yeah, that's a big deal for us.
Yeah.
Now, this is being done in partnership with Themester and a couple other departments, and I don't know if I can credit them properly on the radio, other than the College of Arts and Sciences. But yes, she's coming to the cinema, and we're screening The Big Chill as part of the Themester film series. And The Big Chill just happens to be receiving its 30-year anniversary at the Toronto Film Festival. So there's a new restoration, so the timing is perfect. But then we're also screening 2 other Glenn Close films, Albert Nobbs from about a year and a half ago,
Oscar nominated.
Oscar nominated, and then Dangerous Liaisons. And so I think she will not be present for those 2 screenings, but I think we're honoring her work with those 3
Oh,
films.
yeah.
So she'll be here for. Is it going to be like just a lecture?
It's not. It's actually just going to be a film screening that will probably sell out pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it'll be a film screening with her introducing and then being there for a conversation afterwards. Now, she will be doing some other things on campus while she's here.
Just not necessarily related to the cinema.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see here. You've got a couple other good guests. Bobcat Goldthwait. is going to be here.
Yeah. So we're doing this in partnership with the Comedy Attic, and he's going to do 2 shows after he's here with us at the cinema. But Bobcat Goldthwait is he's made a number of films already, and he has this very distinct darkness to his films, and whether they're comedies or dramas or horror, I mean they're generally pretty dark. And so we're bringing his new film, which hasn't screened other than some festivals, called Willow Creek. And Willow Creek is a found footage horror film, kind of in the vein of
Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch Project.
Yeah.
Thank you. And but the couple that are out in the woods this time are looking for Bigfoot, and so I won't say any more. But it's interesting, it's funny, but it's also pretty darn scary. And then we're also screening God Bless America from a couple years ago, and talk about another dark film that makes you laugh at times uncomfortably. But it's another one of his films. So I think he has a great new voice. I shouldn't say that. He has a great voice in independent cinema these days, and he's, I think, becoming a very respected filmmaker.
Yeah. And you've got a returning guest this semester, Joe Swanberg.
We do,
is
yeah.
coming back.
So we have Joe Swanberg. We told Joe that we would bring his new film, Drinking Buddies, which he's very proud of, and it's a good film.
It's definitely my top 5 favorites of the year so far, maybe my top 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Really amazing film.
I think it's really well done, and I think it's a great step for Joe because he gets to work with some bigger name actors, and I think it's going to bring more attention to his work. And he hasn't compromised his working style, so he still writes outlines for his films, and he bases a lot of the action on improvisation, and then refining the improvisation. But I think this is it's a good film, and I think it's a good step for Joe. And we're timing it to where then we can also screen You're Next, which he has a role in as well.
Yeah. Yep.
And we're also trying to get Adam Weingard here, the director of You're Next, and I think he's a pretty hot horror director these days.
Yeah.
And in fact, I know he's shooting another film right now. So we're still hoping that Adam comes with this package as well.
Yeah. I met Joe at the Indie Film Fest where Drinking Buddies screened, and I talked to him for a little bit, and he was the one who told me that You're Next is coming. And I'd heard about Jason talking about this at South by, and I was like, that movie might be too intense for me. And he kind of looked at me with this like smug look on his face, like, he said something about like, I can vouch for it being a great movie or something like that, just very cryptic. And I'm like, I still don't know if I can handle watching this in the movie theater, but we will see.
It wasn't released by Lionsgate for a couple of years, so it was actually premiered at Toronto in 2010 or 11.
Yeah.
And there were rumors about it that it was too intense, too gory to be released, but that's not true.
Yeah.
It was just in queue,
Sure.
and they had acquired a lot of films at that time, and then there was a merger with another company.
Yeah.
So anyway, no reason for the holdup other than the timing wasn't right.
Yeah. And that visit, it's going to be October 25th, and there's a couple screenings of each of these, 24th, 25th, 26th.
Yes.
And it looks like 24th is the day where people will actually get to see Joe and possibly Adam.
Yeah, and if Adam does come, which I'm hoping he can, we're going to do then a Jorgensen lecture where Joe will interview Adam about independent horror films, which I think
cool.
would be a great topic.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just actually looking at the International Art House series here.
Sure.
You've got several films with a local Indiana connection. So let's talk about Medora.
Sure. Yeah. So you've seen Medora as well?
I haven't. I've been
Okay.
holding off, actually. I've had many opportunities to see it. I've waited.
So Medora is about the town of Medora and the high school basketball team that has maybe 6 or 8 players. It's a kind of a Hoosiers story, but instead of trying to win the state championship, they're trying to win a game.
Yeah.
So they haven't won a game in over a year, and this losing streak. And their challenges of trying to win a game kind of parallel the challenges of the town to survive. And there's a lot of pressure for consolidation, and a lot of the residents are fighting consolidation because they think if you lose the school, the town dies. And so it's a great look at the town. It's a great look at these young men who are just trying to get by. And some of them are struggling with their lives at home. Some of them are struggling with other things. But it's really... I don't want to say it's an underdog story because I don't want to spoil anything, but But it is a great look at this struggling town in the middle of Indiana, and it's I think it parallels the plights of small towns across America. One of the early pitches was it's Gummo meets Hoosiers or something like that. And if you know Gummo, it's a Harmony Korine film, and I think that's only because one of the young men resembles one of the cast members from Gummo.
Yeah.
But,
Interesting.
But anyway, it's a good film. It's a good documentary, and we're not doing the premiere, but we're doing, I think, like an Indiana theatrical premiere.
Okay.
And the filmmakers will be here as well as a lot of the players from the team. So.
Because Medora, I don't think we mentioned this. Medora is literally like 40 minutes from here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
It's not far.
I haven't visited, but you're close.
Yeah. It's basically between Bedford and Seymour.
Yes.
And I could drive there from work in 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you literally just see a sign that says Medora with an arrow, and that unless you turn, you just don't know any better. So yeah, it is really a very small town, but it's very recognizable to people that live, a little bit further south of Bloomington. It's just it's a known town, and like you said, it is very much under the plight of most small towns these days.
And to give the film some credit, there are two bigger names that stepped on as producers. So Stanley Tucci and Steve Buscemi are producers or executive producers of the film. So they've seen the film and they've gotten behind it, and they really want it to succeed.
Yeah. So a couple other films. We've talked about this one a lot. A Teacher,
Yes.
directed by Hannah Fidel, IU alum.
Yes.
And another film by an IU alum, It Felt Like Love. These two kind of both hit at the same time. Both their films are excellent.
They are.
It Felt Like Love might also be in my top 2 or 3. But director Eliza Hittman, and those two will both be here to talk about their films.
Right. So both of the films, or at least A Teacher is in release, I believe, right now in
think so,
theaters
yeah.
or sometime in August. But we scheduled them for December because that was the timing that worked best for them. But we're very pleased to have both of them here, and so we're going. I don't know what the lecture is going to be, but it's great that they're going to both be back at IU.
Well, I think even for the student filmmakers, seeing two people who sort of were in the same place as them succeed in this way, I think is a big deal.
And they're pre-cinema too.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's what's really interesting. So that's
And-
got to be special for them.
Yeah, I think so.
Eliza wasn't even in a film program.
Yeah,
She wasn't even
right.
in telecom. She was a drama major.
Right,
So,
right.
Or she was in the theater program. So,
Yeah.
just very interesting paths. I'll be excited to talk to them again.
But you know what? I mean, theater, film, it's storytelling, I
Exactly.
guess. And I'll just mention, too, that Eliza's film, both of the directors, I think, are listed by IndieWire as like the top 25 to watch.
Yeah.
But then Eliza's film, It Felt Like Love, has a stellar review from Richard Brody in The New Yorker. I mean, it's
Oh, yeah.
incredible. You should check it out.
Well, I mean, we've got interviews with both of them. You can check those out because I saw a teacher at South by and talked to Eliza, and then Hannah, and then Hannah was like, "Hey, there's this other girl from IU too," and I was like, "All right, let's do this." So I got to see It Felt Like Love as well, which I thought. No offense, Hannah. I think It Felt Like Love really blew me away. I loved A Teacher, but It Felt Like Love changed me.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just something I relate to more. Anyways, we're not under the gun here for time, but I would like, John, to just give you a chance to sort of highlight some things that you think are going to be very interesting. I've talked about the stuff I like.
Yeah,
So.
let's talk about. We have the Harry Dean Stanton documentary as well.
Okay.
And so Harry Dean Stanton, if you don't know the name, you've seen him in films, guaranteed, and he's been in over 200 films. But this documentary is a pretty intimate portrait. It goes through some of the films, but there are also nice interviews with David Lynch and Debbie Harry and Chris Christopherson. But also what makes it most intimate is he feels like he missed his calling of being a folk singer. And so, I mean, he's so there's a lot of songs interspersed of him, singing. But Harry Dean Stanton, for me, growing up loving independent film, I would go to a video store, and if it had Harry Dean Stanton in the film, it brought it up to a position to where I would give it a second look and make sure that I would check it out.
Just for our younger viewers, if you don't know who Harry Dean Stanton is, he was in The Avengers. When the Hulk falls down into the trash can off of the Skyjet or whatever, and Bruce Banner wakes up, the janitor standing over him, that's Harry Dean Stanton.
That's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Hey, I don't forget Harry Dean Stanton when I see it on screen. It's like...
And then I'll talk about maybe one or two more, then we'll go to another series. There's this small film called Wajda, and it's by a female filmmaker set in Saudi Arabia, and it's opening soon, I think August, September, and it's a simple. It's not a simple story. It's a nice story about a little girl who's very independent, who wants to buy a bicycle, and bicycles for young girls aren't really allowed in her society. So she still figures out a way to do it, and she enters this a contest to. It's a recitation contest for reading the Quran or Quran, and so anyway, it's a nice little story. It's a brave story as well, and I think it's worth checking out. And that's from Sony Classics. There are some other things there, but I'd like to move on to.
Absolutely.
Let me jump forward to Ava DuVernay, if I can, for a moment.
Yeah.
So Ava DuVernay is a female filmmaker that had an incredible year so far in 2013. So she was, I don't remember the name of the award, but Best Female Filmmaker at Sundance, something to that effect, and I'm spoiling it. But then also she won the John Cassavetes Award this year. She has been receiving all of these great accolades that I think she really deserves. But beyond her work in her films, which the two of the films that we're screening while she's here are Middle of Nowhere and I Will Follow. But beyond her work in her film, she started this distribution company for African American filmmakers, and so she speaks really well about how African American films are not seen in the cinemas, or at least independent films aren't seen in the cinema. And so she wanted to do something about it, and she's championing a lot of films, and she's distributing a lot of films, and I think hearing her story from a filmmaker's perspective, but also a business perspective, is something that's going to be interesting for a lot of people.
Yeah.
She was part of the ESPN 9 for 9 with her newest film, Venus Versus, about Venus Williams, and that'll be the first thing that we screen while she's here.
Very cool.
Can we talk about Orphans for a moment?
I think we should. I mean, I would like to do a whole episode about orphans, but not literal orphans, the Orphans Symposium.
Yeah. So we're doing Orphans Midwest 2013, Materiality and the Moving Image. And this is a Midwest version of an orphaned film symposium that has been taking place since the 90s. Started out at North Carolina, but then moved to NYU. And so it's been happening every other year. And then occasionally in an off year, it would happen at the Academy Film Archive, or it would happen at UCLA. It's going to happen in Amsterdam, but this is the first time it's happening in the Midwest. And what it takes a look at is films that have been orphaned by their owners. And it could be anything from industrial films, commercial films, home movies, anything that has been orphaned by the copyright holder or their owner. And so it's the symposia generally feature restored works, or the first time some of these works have been seen maybe ever, or first time they've been seen in decades. And then they're also talked about by scholars. And hopefully this sounds interesting to people, because I don't think I'm doing it justice. But part of this is we also have then these 3 special evening events. And one of them is with an experimental filmmaker named Bill Morrison. And Indiana University Cinema, along with the Bourne's Jewish Studies program, have commissioned a film from Bill Morrison that's going to premiere here with a score from an Opus 3 recording artist, Maya Beiser, who's a cellist. And so we're going to do this world premiere of one of these films, and then there's a complete package of films in the evening, films for cello. That's one of the evenings. There's also an evening of orphaned films with live music, and the live music includes bands from Nashville and elsewhere. And so there are going to be these films that are mostly silent, but some of them have sound, and then the music will still accompany those sound films. So like an organ recital with additional music, or home movies of Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner. And so it's really going to be an interesting mix of things. And it's the daytime events are very academic. The evening events are celebrations. And so I think it's going to be interesting and a lot of fun.
Yeah, this does sound really interesting to me. Just getting to see some of this stuff that is not really – you're not going to get to see this really anywhere.
I don't think so, unless you go to NYU once every 2 years or catch it at the Academy. But and this, I think, is one of the more ambitious symposium that have been held. So I think it's going to be a great event, and our partner at NYU, Dan Strebel, is very excited about the program.
Yeah.
So we're very proud of that. I would say that, and it's hard to believe what I'm going to tell you here, but this is the most ambitious project that we've done to date.
Wow.
This symposium, and biggest budget and the most ambitious as far as the number of presenters and the events and filmmakers. I mean, it's really a big deal for us.
Very cool. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Let's talk about a couple other things. We have a little bit of time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Cine Kids, we're doing something a little different this semester. So we're traditionally we would have some international film in there, and these are all, for the most part, American films, or there are no subtitles in the Cine Kids program. So we have the Little Fugitive that we talked about, but we also have this great stop motion program, and we're going to have
That looks great.
so some Ladislaw Starevich and Willis O'Brien stop motion films, and then it's going to be accompanied by Jason Fickle, a local musician here on
He's
guitar.
a very close friend of mine.
He is. Okay,
Yes.
so this is going to be a lot of fun. So I think that'll hopefully draw some kids in and get them exposed to some early cinema. We also have a screening of E.T. in the cinema, which we're very excited about, and we have a visual effects gentleman who you've interviewed, Hoyt Yateman, is going to be here with us, and he's going to talk about E.T. and the effects on E.T.
Yeah,
as well.
he had so many good stories. We didn't even get to E.T., so I'm excited to hear what he did on E.T. and how he tells it, because he's a great storyteller.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're doing a Ray Harryhausen program as well, and that's tied to Underground. And so we're presenting the Harryhausen fairy tales that he worked on. I think there are 6 films, and all but one are screened on 35 millimeter prints from the Academy Film Archive. So we're very proud to be doing this. I think the program had premiered in Los Angeles, and so now we're going to get it. So we're excited about that. And again, more stop motion for the kids.
Absolutely.
I don't think we'll talk about City Lights because I think
We've
you're
got
going to
them
have
coming up in a couple weeks.
Perfect. And then Underground, you've talked to.
We've talked to them last week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's jump forward to. There's a really challenging film, and okay, I just blew it for anybody that wanted to come, but it's a film called The Little Deaths,
Yeah.
or how do you say it? Las Muertos Chiquitas, and
Yeah.
it's a 6-hour roughly film about. Women being interviewed about sex, and it's women in Mexico, and it's not only about sex, but it's about pleasure, it's about sexual violence, it's about their relationships with their husbands, and if you let this film, if you give it some time, it really sinks in, and it gets to be something that you don't want to walk away from. It's a film that's being championed by a friend of ours, Jill Godmilo, the filmmaker, and Jill's going to come here and help present the film, but also then hold a Jorgensen lecture with the filmmaker. The film has only played in New York. It hasn't played anywhere else in the U.S., but it is going to get some distribution from Facets in Chicago. So we're helping facilitate a little bit of a tour with that. We have the Themester program, and
A lot of good movies in here.
yeah.
a lot of good movies in here. Yes, The Social Network. The theme is connectedness, networks in a complex world. So we have The Social Network, and the band played on The Hunt, which we talked about,
Yeah.
Margin Call, The Big Chill, and a great Russian version of King Lear, which is wonderful, and then Catfish.
Yeah.
Going to jump forward. We have a couple things. Well, we have a number of things for October. We have a series that we're calling October Nights, and it's actually tied to a class that Joan Hawkins is teaching. But we're doing some Wednesday night screenings, so that's odd for us because there are classes on Wednesday nights. But these are tied to a class, so they're going to be a mix of public audience and students that are there for their class. But we're screening Michael Powell's Peeping Tom, which is
Very exciting.
excellent. And then 2 Giallo films, I'll say. Mark of Satan, which is actually Black Sunday is the alternate title, as well as Suspiria. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Suspiria on the big screen.
Yeah.
Then also as part of that series, on Sunday, we're screening Nosferatu on 35 millimeter with a band called M. And so this band played to Nosferatu in the 90s here in Bloomington. I'm not sure where they did and exactly when they did, but we're resurrecting M for this screening, and I think it'll be. I've heard them. It'll be a great sound. It'll be a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some more non-traditional accompaniment.
I'm definitely excited about that series.
And then I'm going to jump forward to another guest that we have coming, who I think will be interesting for our audience of cinephiles. So we're screening a series of 9 films from Jean-Luc Godard.
Yes.
And we're screening, I guess it'll be after this happens, but in New York at Lincoln Center, they're doing a complete Godard retrospective. And I don't know how many films that is, but incredible amount of films.
He's quite prolific.
Quite prolific. And he actually has a 3D film coming out called Farewell to Language. And that's very much like Godard to do that. But we have the person that's presenting the series and curated the 9 films out of the dozens is Richard Brody. So Richard Brody is a film critic from The New Yorker, and he's written what I consider maybe the best book on Godard, Everything is Cinema, The Working Life of Jean-Luc Godard. And I think he'll add some really great insights to folks that have struggled with Godard over the years. And okay,
This guy.
One thing one argument that Brody makes in his book, and I'll leave it at that, is there are 3 guiding principles that have kind of followed Godard throughout his life. One is he believes that himself and others need to be completely immersed in cinema. So cinema isn't something, how did he put it? I'm going to forget the quote. But the experience of being immersed in cinema is something that's very important to him. That's his life. He is totally immersed, and he wants others to be totally immersed. Cinema should have authorship, so cinema should reflect the life of the author. So his films are very personal, and so they do reflect his life. And then the third thing that he carries forward in all of his films is cinema should be relevant to the social or political situations of the times. So his films are always very, very political, but also have elements of pop culture throughout. So I think he's lived, by these guidelines most of his life, and at least in his films. And I think Brody will probably talk about that. But we have a great slate of films for that series, including the 266-minute history of cinema, which is very experimental.
Talked about that on the Underground series episode last week. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I think, I really wanted to do, but we couldn't find time in the schedule to do it, but I really wanted to do Martin Scorsese's, I don't know the title, but like the history of the movies, and Godard's, and break it up like every Sunday morning, do this history according to Godard and Scorsese, and it just didn't quite work out, but at least we're screening this.
Yeah.
And then, do we have time for more?
A little bit. Jason, is there anything that you're excited about?
Let's see. You kind of put me on a spot here, even though I was actually preparing for that.
Midnight series?
We'll have the Midnight series guys on next week.
Okay, awesome.
All of those look really good.
I mean, I honestly, where's it at? Whatever Happened to Baby Jane is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Like I saw that and I thought, why am I so drawn to this movie? Like I read the description and I'm just like, yeah, like I'm on board. Like I've seen it, but I'm just like, I was drawn into it as like a young boy for some reason, and it's like, oh my gosh, what is this movie going to do to me as an older, guy now? I don't know, but yeah, I saw that on there. Betty Davis and Joan Crawford. I mean, it's just like, come on now.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, such iconic images in that film, and I guess same here. I'm curious as to how it'll affect me, later in life. I'm going to make one more pitch too. If you haven't seen F for Fake, you come to F for Fake.
Very good film.
And as a companion piece to that, we're screening a film called The Hoax.
I did not know this film existed, but I'm dying to see it now.
It's a good film, and especially if after seeing F for Fake, it'll even be much more relevant for you.
Yeah.
We have an author of a book called, let me read it, The Best Films You've Never Seen. And what it is, it's a compilation of interviews with filmmakers about films that are important to them. And so we chose one of the films out of that book that we thought resonated with us, but also then tied to the Lilly Library because the author has his papers at the Lilly Library. So I thought it was a perfect tie-in. But anyway, there's lots of good stuff here.
Hoagie Carmichael series.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk
Finally,
about
the
that.
Hoagie Carmichael series, because
Yeah.
he sits out there all the time, and it's time we talked about Hoagie.
Yeah, so Hoagie Carmichael has been welcoming patrons to the cinema since we opened, and he's not the most loved statue on campus, but he's pretty loved.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're kicking off a 5-year celebration of the work of Hoagie Carmichael in films and music. And when I say films and music, we're going to have some music hopefully played before each film, live piano, the songs of Hoagie Carmichael. But we're going to showcase all of the films over those 5 years in which Hoagie Carmichael either appeared or appeared with his music.
Right.
And mostly we're focusing on which he appeared. And so we're starting off with The Best Years of Our Lives.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. I've never seen it, but I've always heard good things about it.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's I don't know.
It
I
just
think
sounds
it's
really interesting,
and
just
it's
the topic, you know?
so relevant. I mean, I think soldiers go through today what they
Right.
went through in
Exactly.
the 40s. And yeah, I think it's a pretty timeless film.
Yeah, because I mean, not a lot of movies sort of celebrated what happened after everyone got back from war,
Right.
you know, especially from that time period. So I'm really interested in seeing it.
Yeah, yeah. And they were screening a documentary, an unfinished documentary called Hoagie, and it's by a filmmaker named Peter Davis, who has his collection in the Black Film Center archive. So we're bringing that in, and then we're also screening Topper.
Yeah. So you say this is a 5-year celebration?
It is.
So to have and to have not is possible in the future.
Next year, yes. And you know, we know
Excellent.
we know that it will be fruitless, but we're going to invite Lauren Bacall.
Nice.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
Yeah, well,
For me, I like the obscure stuff,
Sure.
and that's not her big. That's not the thing everyone knows her for. So maybe that's a thing that she's excited that somebody is remembering.
Yeah, and we're hoping that maybe Hoagie strikes a nice chord that,
Yes.
that she'll remember Hoagie fondly and maybe want to participate.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about that. We mentioned The President's Choice earlier, but let's just list the films real quick. Triumph of the Will, Stalingrad, Schindler's List. Let's
Yeah.
not sleep on Schindler's List. Downfall, which, by the way, if you've seen part of this movie.
you've seen it on YouTube.
Yes, because there's a meme for a while where there's a scene in this where Hitler is like screaming about something, and it's all in German. So there's been a meme on the internet where people will fill in their own
I haven't seen that.
subtitles.
I've seen the film, but I haven't
There's
seen the meme.
literally 1,000 of these. So Hitler reacts to whatever, and it's
Yeah.
just subtitles of him yelling about whatever thing.
Like his Xbox Gold membership got canceled.
Yes.
Or something.
Yeah, just
and
silly
it's
things like
It's all
that.
manipulated by the subtitles.
It's a pretty intense film,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
you can tell by the meme, I guess.
Yes.
But don't discount Stalingrad. Stalingrad
Oh,
is
yeah.
an amazing film, and the filmmakers made a number of really strong films. Joseph Vilsmeyer, I think, is the name. One of the most interesting for me and haunting films of the 90s was a film called Brother of Sleep that he did. And it's in this Austrian village, and there's an organ, a pipe organ that's installed, and there's this young villager who just has this gift of music, who's a natural and starts playing. But it transcends a lot of different things. But I remember getting so emotional every time I watched that film, and I projected it for like a week, and it was it's just so good for me.
Yeah. Well, the entire cinema catalog it'll be in the cinema this week. So by the time
Yes.
this airs, it'll be
Absolutely,
in the cinema.
yes.
Got a beautiful new cover on this. I love the cover.
Designed by Jennifer Vickers.
Yes, we love Jennifer Vickers. Of course, John probably loves her more than we do. Stuff we didn't even mention. There's extra stuff in
Oh,
here
yeah,
that we didn't
there's
even
so much
talk
stuff.
about. There's probably huge movies we didn't even mention because it's that packed full. Another great semester, John. We're very excited
Thanks.
to see this stuff. And I think we'll get out of here. John, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So thank you guys for listening. My name is Andy.
And I'm Jason.
This has been, and always will be, A Place for Film. A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.